yield statistic is very important in the hotel industry because it lets you determine how much money you should have made. So the yield statistic formula is your actual room revenue over your potential room revenue. And potential room revenue is if you sold every single room in the hotel at your full rack rate. So yield is defined as the percentage of income that could be generated if 100% of available rooms were sold at full rack rate. So let's look at an example. If we have a 500 room hotel and last night they sold 200 rooms at $85 and there's a $100 rack rate, what was the yield for this hotel? So what we do is take our total revenue and divide it by our potential revenue. So our total revenue was the 200 rooms times $85, but our potential revenue is 500 rooms times $100. So we have $17,000 is what we made, but we could have made $50,000. So this is a yield of 34%, which is actually terrible because you should be making much more than $17,000 if your potential is $50,000. Another thing to look at to compare is your occupancy versus your yield, because frequently in the hotel industry we talk about occupancy all the time, but we really should be concerned more about yield. Occupancy doesn't really tell us anything about how much money we make, where yield obviously does. So another example is to look at these two hotels. So we have the same hotel where we have 500 rooms and we had 275 rooms were sold at $80 and 125 rooms were sold at the 120 rack. What we're going to determine is the yield and the occupancy percentage. Then for Hotel XYZ, we have the same 500 rooms, but we have a different configuration of how many rooms and what the rates were. So let's look at that when we break it all down. So Hotel ABC, we sold 400 rooms of the 500, so our occupancy is 80%. The same is true for XYZ. Our occupancy is 80%. Both hotels sold 400 rooms. However, ABC sold 275 rooms at $80, whereas XYZ sold 275 rooms at their full rack 120. So ABC has $37,000 in total revenue, whereas XYZ has $43,000 in total revenue. In order to determine our yield, we take our potential room revenue for both hotels, which is our rack rate of 125 times our 500 rooms, and it's $60,000. So in order to determine the yield, we take the $37,000 divided by $60,000, we come up with a yield of 62%. And for the yield for XYZ, we take $43,000 and divide it by 60,000 and come up with a yield of 72%. So the point here is that you can look at both hotels and see that, oh, they were equal because they had the same occupancy percentage, but that's not true because XYZ did a much better job of selling more rooms at rack rate, so they have a much higher yield. Obviously 72% is higher than 62%. So that's the key point with the determination between occupancy and yield. We have a quiz on this section that comes up a little bit later, so make sure that you realize when we're talking about occupancy and yield, this is the way to calculate both of those.